Hello, 22 Goals listeners. If you're enjoying our show, you might also like some of The Ringer's other narrative podcasts, like Book of Wrestling, a show about the Attitude Era of professional wrestling, stories about Mike Tyson, The Rock, and The Undertaker, to name just a few. Or maybe you'd like one of our culture narrative shows like This Blew Up, which peels back the curtain of TikTok collab houses. Is it really that easy to blow up on TikTok? I have cute dogs. I can dance. I can't dance. We like making shows for you here at The Ringer, and we like you. Thanks for listening.
This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day, or hiking, or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago, and the guy was like, "You're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago." I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details. This episode is brought to you by Atlassian. Atlassian software like Jira, Confluence, and Trello help power global collaboration for all teams so they can accomplish everything that's impossible alone. Because individually we're great, but together we're so much better. Learn how to unleash the potential of your team at Atlassian.com. Atlassian.com. Atlassian. Tap the banner or visit this episode's page to learn more.
All right. I gotta tell you something embarrassing about myself. If you are a keen listener of this program, and I think all our listeners are keen, frankly, if you're a regular 22 Goals listener and therefore a bit keener than the listeners of other podcasts, you may have noticed that I have a tendency to tease a particular nation state, I guess is the term. I make fun of one country more than all the other countries combined, probably. Can you guess which country it is? I'm not going to make you guess. It's England. Of course it's England. That's not the embarrassing thing, but it's true. I've said things about England from time to time that are not absolutely rise and grind. That's Cockney rhyming slang for nice and kind. I've mocked their pies and the organ meats that come inside them. I've mocked the frankly astonishing prevalence of the name Terry among English men in the 1980s. I've invented and subsequently mocked entire English towns with names such as Flint Snitch and Scunbridge. That's not nice. And let me tell you, in the village of Flint Snitch at this very moment, there's a man called Terry sitting in his cottage pouring like horseradish sauce into a pie crust. And Terry does not appreciate my attempts at so-called humor, Humour. Well, the explanation for my savage roasting of the lower 5/8 of the island of Great Britain is that I am not a fan of the English national soccer team. That's also not the embarrassing thing, but it's also true. Not liking the England national soccer team is my right. I want to say my duty as an American. If I didn't take a stand, the King of England could walk right in here and force you to root for Harry Kane and his weird, well-groomed face. No! Freedom. I root against England as a matter of principle. But there's a deeper truth here. Okay, here's my embarrassing confession. My deeply embarrassing confession is that in most arenas except for soccer, I'm kind of an Anglophile. The English national soccer team, no thank you. But England itself, I'm fairly into it. I'm sorry. I love English place names. Anything that ends in wold, W-O-L-D, sign me up. I love soft, green English landscapes. I love English novels. I love English poems. I love tea, the beverage. I love the phrase, mind the gap. I love old, crumbling English country houses covered with vines. I love English murder mysteries. Relatedly, I love English comedy. English imperial politics of the 16th through 20th centuries-ish, no thank you. But English dogs, like a good English sheepdog, sign me up twice. Also, pickles, obviously. Thanks, Pix. This humiliating fondness I feel for England is only partly my fault. I mostly blame my grandma. I grew up watching Masterpiece Theater with my grandma, and I came away with the idea that the apex of civilization was like a costume drama where a guy in a Regency neckcloth was stepping out of a carriage and saying, "Pray make haste, Arabella." There are two types of Americans in America. One rational type who hears the sentence, "Pray make haste, Arabella," and recoils in horror and drops whatever they're carrying and sprints away. And one irrational type who hears the sentence, "Pray make haste, Arabella," and immediately subscribes to BritBox. I am the second type of American. Unfortunately, my embarrassing confession actually gets worse, if you can believe it. Now, I don't know all that much about my ancestry, but I know the Phillipses are English. Of my 3 non-Phillips grandparents, you've got a Bailey, Irish, a Campbell, Scottish, and an Ellis, Welsh. So I am a microcosm, basically, of the British Isles, and the English part of me won out over the other parts. The English part of me gave me my name. Footnote 1, see colonialism. I colonized myself. So, do I make fun of England because I dislike the English national soccer team? Yes. Do I dislike the English national soccer team largely because I'm overcompensating for the low-grade humiliation I feel over my unjustifiable affection for English culture generally, despite the numerous and highly justifiable reasons one might have not to be affectionate toward English culture generally? I don't know, Terry. You tell me. I'm Brian Phillips. By the way, I should hyphenate that. I'm Brian Phillips Campbell Bailey Ellis. My God, I say that name and immediately want to cook a kidney inside a donut. Welcome to 22 Goals, the story of the World Cup. We are here today to talk about England specifically. We're here to talk about Michael Owen's astonishing goal against Argentina in the 1998 World Cup, scored when he was just 18. Truly one of the high points, one of the most optimistic moments in the recent history of English soccer. A moment when the future looked full of promise. This moment lasted about half an hour. That's not an exaggeration. It literally lasted about half an hour, but it was a good half hour. We're here to talk about Michael Owen. By extension, we're here to talk about the entire golden generation of English soccer. Do you remember the golden generation of English soccer? This was the, in retrospect, somewhat ironic name given to the group of English players who came of age in the late 90s and early 2000s, a group headlined not only by Michael Owen, but by several other global superstars, including David Beckham, the world's most perfectly symmetrical human being, except for that one eyebrow. You know, that one eyebrow, including Steven Gerrard, the talismanic Liverpool captain, including Frank Lampard, the Chelsea midfielder, John Terry, the Chelsea defender. This was also the era of English soccer that produced one of the most toxic sports media cultures in the history of toxic sports media cultures. Like, picture the Jane Lynch Glee meme. I am going to create a celebrity industrial complex so toxic. This was the moment when British tabloids of the Rupert Murdoch / Piers Morgan / celebrity phone tapping / racist jingoist / misogynist variety were at the peak of their power and influence. This era gave us the term WAGs, short for wives and girlfriends. It gave us endless exposés about star players, often quite legitimately disturbing excesses based on sources of the friend of a friend / hairstylist's cousin variety, who were paid by the tabloids to come forward with wheelbarrows full of dirt. We've got players cheating on their wives with their teammates' girlfriends, John Terry. We've got players cheating on their wives with their brothers' wives, Ryan Giggs. That went on for 8 years, by the way.
My brother's a great footballer. I always thought he was a great person, but now I know he's not. He's embarrassment. He's a bottler. He's never apologised.
That's Rodri Giggs, Ryan's brother, truly expressing the spirit of the age by advertising his exclusive tell-all in the British mega tabloid The Sun. Also, not the worst thing Ryan's allegedly done. We've got high-speed Lamborghini crashes. We've got wadded-up restaurant receipts featuring tens of thousands of pounds of pink champagne. We've got 1 million puns about Wayne Rooney's receding hairline. We're going to talk about that too. And along the way, we may find time to psychoanalyze me and to discover whether my inconvenient combination of obnoxious Anglophilia and equally obnoxious Anglophobia can possibly produce a balanced look at one of the most obnoxious eras of soccer anywhere in the world, a true British empire of sheer obnoxiousness. The sun never sets on Wayne Rooney tabloid puns. That's sun with a capital S in italics, like the name of the tabloid, The Sun. I should not write sentences that require you to have visual access to my scripts to understand them. Read this script in essay form today on theringer.com. This is not a soccer podcast. This is my bow of burning gold. These are my arrows of desire. This is my spear. O clouds unfold. This is my chariot of fire. Stick with me, and over the course of the next however long it takes to boil these kidneys, we are going to follow the promise of England's unofficial sporting anthem. We're going to build Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land. Let's make haste, Arabella. Okay, England's golden generation. Little history, we'll be quick. In the early 1990s, the biggest clubs in English soccer broke away from the lower divisions to form the Premier League. When we talk about England's golden generation, we're basically talking about the nucleus of star players who came of age after that happened. Early Premier League times. You got Rio Ferdinand, you got Ashley Cole, you got Paul Scholes. All these English stars whose careers coincided with a moment when the internet and satellite TV were transforming the game in a couple of different ways. Way number one, the globalization of club soccer was making the Premier League the most popular and lucrative sports league on earth. It used to be that Arsenal fans were people who lived near Arsenal. Now, Arsenal fans could live anywhere as long as they were prepared to spend $90 on a licensed Jermaine Pennant shirt. Way number two, the globalization of club soccer was leading to an influx of non-English players into the rosters of English club teams. It used to be that English teams were almost exclusively made up of English players, in the same way that NFL teams are largely made up of Americans. Now, that's changing. In 1999, Chelsea fielded the first ever starting 11 in the English Premier League with 0 English players. In 2005, Arsenal fielded the first entirely foreign matchday squad. No English players on the first team or on the bench. More people are watching English teams than ever before. At the same time, fewer English players are on those teams. Are you a Great British Bake Off fan by any chance? I am. Bring me my rough puff of burning gold. I think about the underlying xenophobic anxiety of this era of English soccer by imagining what it would feel like if the Bake Off suddenly fielded a tent with 0 British bakers in it. Just wall-to-wall Jurgens and Giuseppes and Januses. Obviously, those guys are great, but you have to think the sudden disappearance of British bakers from a show called British Bake Off would occasion some anxiety among the viewing public. British people would be like, what does this mean? Have we been supplanted as bakers by the rest of the world? My God, are the French better at pastry than we are? This is basically what happens with English soccer, and what it means is that due to this new scarcity economy of English stars, the English players who are good enough to thrive in the Premier League become celebrities on a scale almost unprecedented in British sports. David Beckham, the startlingly symmetrical and stylish Manchester United midfielder, obviously becomes, very symmetrically, one of the most recognizable humans on Earth. Wayne Rooney, the Manchester United forward who's a little more challenged from a symmetry standpoint, becomes one of the most recognizable humans ever to be charged an ugly tax by a sex worker whose friend later divulged details of the encounter to the Daily Star. I don't know if I've gotten this across, but British tabloids, they're not great. Vibes are off. Just my opinion as a human being. Anyway, for most of the 20th century, soccer players in England were seen as working stiffs, lucky if they could grind out a middle-class income playing what was regarded as an unglamorous, working-class game. But now, England's best players are caught in the updraft of the shiny, new 24-hour sports TV, paparazzi, Daily Mail volcano. These guys are serving two important functions on top of their soccer functions, and in Beckham's case, handsomeness functions. Function number one, they're branding the English Premier League as English for the rest of the world. And function number two, they're reassuring their home fans that English players are still good enough to play for English teams. And all these guys have a ton of success at the club level. Beckham, Rooney, Ferdinand, and Scholes win basically everything that can be won for Alex Ferguson's Manchester United dynasty. Lampard and Terry win multiple Premier League championships, multiple FA Cups, and a Champions League title with Chelsea. Gerrard wins a Champions League title with Liverpool and becomes famous for bonking in ridiculous long-range goals in high-stakes moments. Success and fame breed more success and more fame. David Beckham dates and eventually marries the pop star Victoria Adams, a member of the wildly popular girl group, the Spice Girls. It goes great. Ashley Cole dates and eventually marries the pop star Cheryl Tweedy, a member of the wildly popular girl group Girls Aloud. It goes marginally less great. Don't look it up. Joe Cole, no relation to Ashley, maybe dates and eventually leaps bare-chested and shoeless out the window of the house belonging to the model Keely Hazel, an action which multiple tabloids attribute to Hazel's bodybuilder boyfriend beating the shit out of Cole after finding him asleep in her house. There's a lot of that. There is just so much of that. Success, fame, headlines, flashbulbs, sky-high expectations for the English national team at every big tournament. As long as this core group is around, the logic seems sound. If Manchester United and Chelsea are the best club teams in the world, and many of Manchester United and Chelsea's best players are English, why shouldn't England be expected to win the World Cup for the first time since 1966? Well, for now, let's just say that this group of players soon develops a paralyzing reputation for underperforming at international tournaments. Their success at the club level doesn't quite translate at the Euros and the World Cup. How badly does it fail to translate? Let's turn to Wikipedia. Bring me my disambiguation page of burning gold. One of the saddest sentences I have ever read can be found on the Wikipedia page explaining the concept of a golden generation in sports. A golden generation is exactly what it sounds like. The saddest sentence on the Golden Generation Wikipedia page falls under the England subheading, subheading 2.2.4. It reads, quote, despite some impressive performances, it then lists exactly one impressive performance against Germany in 2001. Inconsistency resulted in this group of players failing to live up to expectations, resulting in the group becoming synonymous with disappointment and failed potential. And what's sad about this is not just the sentence itself. It's not just that these wildly successful, famous, and wealthy guys became synonymous with disappointment and failed potential. It's also the sheer number of citation footnotes that follow the sentence. Like, you know how when a Wikipedia page states a fact, it's supposed to include a reference supporting that fact? So you read like, Emilia vestatrix is a fungus that causes the coffee rust disease. And then a little 1, and then the 1 points to an article in the scientific journal Agricultural Fungi Today, or whatever. That little superscript 1 tells you that this fact is established. It's known. People talk about it. And then sometimes there'll be more evidence, and you get 2 footnotes next to each other, a little 1 and a little 2. Like, this fact is extremely known. People very much talk about it. Well, the sentence about England's golden generation becoming synonymous with disappointment and failed potential starts after citation 37. And if you include the footnotes, the end of the sentence goes, synonymous with disappointment and failed potential 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43. Devastating, Wikipedia. Just an incredible string of numbers sprouting out the end of that sentence. To put this in context, I looked at the Wikipedia page for the atom, the basic building block of matter. The atom also never won the World Cup, or I guess, technically, maybe the atom won all the World Cups. But this one sentence about the golden generation has more footnotes than the first 8 full paragraphs on the atom combined. I realize this is not a perfect comparison, but if you just look at these citation numbers, the implication is clear. England's failure to deliver at the international level is a truth so fundamental that it's actually more fundamental than the basic structure of the universe.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You might say all kinds of stuff when things go wrong, but these are the words you really need to remember. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. They've got options to fit your unique insurance needs, meaning you can talk to your agent to choose the coverage you need, have coverage options to protect the things you value most, file a claim right on the State Farm mobile app, and even reach a real person when you need to talk to someone. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
England's golden generation. Extremely golden when they play on their various club teams, significantly less golden when they play together for England. How did these players end up here? Okay, there is a question hanging over this episode, like my mouse cursor over the Activate Free Trial button on literally any streaming service with a Miss Marple vertical. The question is, what counts as success? For a soccer player, what do you have to do to have a good career? Who gets to decide what constitutes a good career? For most people, I'm guessing, the golden generation players have what look on paper like the trappings of a wildly successful career. Get rich, check. Get famous, check. Be idolized by children, check. Be cheered by tens of thousands of people on a near-weekly basis, check. Be called Captain Fatso in a massive headline in the Daily Star? Okay, maybe not that one. Wayne Rooney was Captain Fatso, by the way. This really happened. I don't know why I find that headline so endearing. The Star intended it as body shaming, but I just think it sounds so cute. He's Wayne Rooney to you, but he's forever Captain Fatso in my heart. Anyway, money, fame, sports cars, mansions, awards, trophies, beautiful spouses, etc., etc., etc. On paper, it sure looks like success. And yet, footnotes 38, 39, 40, 41, and so on all tell me that every one of these players is living with an asterisk, is synonymous with disappointment, is, to some degree, an embarrassment because they never won the European Championship, and more importantly, they never won the World Cup. So, is it a good career if you accomplish all that other stuff, but people remember you largely for the one big thing you didn't accomplish? Or is it a bad career because you're defined by a failure, even if your failure meant that when you came down with a mysterious ankle infection, you got to rehabilitate it from a luxury hotel in Abu Dhabi? That's Steven Gerrard, 2011. This really happened. How can an ankle even get infected? He was fine. How did we end up here? This era started so promisingly. Remember that half hour of pure hope? Let's rewind for a second. Let's go back to the beginning, before all the drama, before all the news of the world headlines, before all the assault charges stemming from alleged attacks on DJs in bars who refused to play Phil Collins songs. Also Steven Gerrard, 2009, the DJ was fine. Before all the visits to the hospital bedsides of 10-year-olds you hit with your Bentley. That's Steven Gerrard again, 2007, 10-year-old was fine. Before all the madness, there was Michael Owen's goal. Let's talk about the goal. It is such a great goal. Michael Owen was 18 years old during the 1998 World Cup in France. 4 years earlier, England had humiliatingly failed to qualify for the World Cup in the United States, so the Three Lions return to the tournament in '98 represented a new birth of optimism, a shot at redemption. Three Lions is, of course, the nickname of the English national soccer team. Very strong nickname by European standards. Kind of a weirdly specific number of lions. I think that makes it better. More teams should do this. I am a fan of the Chicago 17 Bears. Michael Owen was born in December 1979 in the English city of Chester. That sounds like part of an English city. Manchester, Colchester. It's the whole city. Chester. Chester is in the county of Cheshire. Chester, Cheshire. This is quite simply the most English shit imaginable. If I could eat a slice of cheddar in Chester, Cheshire, I might die of happiness. Here lies Brian Phillips, loving husband, son, and internationally revered soccer podcaster, died of cheese consonants. Actually, hang on, I'm looking this up. It turns out that cheddar cheese is named after a village in Somerset, England. And it also turns out that there is another different type of cheese called Cheshire cheese. So one could theoretically eat cheddar in Cheshire and then eat Cheshire in cheddar. Just when you think you've reached maximum England, England unlocks a new level. Okay, we gotta move this story along. Pray make haste, Arabella. Michael Owen, born in Chester. Chester is sort of sandwiched between Liverpool and the Welsh border. So Michael's parents worked in Liverpool. He had family in Liverpool. He had an aunt and uncle who ran a restaurant in Liverpool. But he grew up just over the border in northern Wales. In his autobiography, Owen describes the region where he grew up as, quote, near Mold in Flintshire. I simply cannot. Michael's mom, Jeanette, worked in the head office of a frozen foods company. His dad was a former professional footballer who'd played for Everton in Liverpool, among many other clubs. Now he worked as an insurance agent. Michael's dad's name, inevitably, was Terry. He also had a brother named Terry. Don't look so surprised. I'm guessing their next-door neighbor was also named Terry, and that guy had a dog named Terry. I don't know. Michael was an Everton fan as a kid. But as a schoolboy, he was scouted by Everton's ferocious crosstown rival, Liverpool. So he ended up joining the Liverpool youth program, and it was clear immediately that he was a sensational talent. As a teenager, he scored 11 goals in 5 matches to lead Liverpool to the Youth FA Cup, broke multiple scoring records for England's national youth teams. He was fast, he was tenacious, he was dogged. He was a prodigy. Played his first senior match for Liverpool in 1997 at the age of 17, scored a goal in his debut. The following year, he finished in a 3-way tie for the Premier League Golden Boot. The other 2 players were Dion Dublin and Chris Sutton, and finished 3rd in the PFA Player of the Year voting behind Dennis Bergkamp and Tony Adams. At the end of 1998, he finished 2nd behind Zinedine Zidane for World Soccer's World Player of the Year award. I just love watching old videos of Michael Owen as a young star. If Wayne Rooney was a wrecking ball and David Beckham played with a sort of slow, aristocratic grace, Michael was one of those funny attackers who kind of seemed to squirt everywhere on the pitch, like they're being shot out of a water cannon. He's not a big guy. He's like 5'8", just zippy as hell, changes direction on a dime, runs with this sort of all-out, full-body intensity that looks uncoordinated, but isn't. It looks as though the different parts of his body are taking different routes to their destination, and only he knows exactly where they're going to meet up. And in all these old clips, you see him like running neck and neck with a couple of much larger defenders. They're keeping up with him, and then suddenly someone depresses the plunger on the water gun, and whoosh, he just goes squirting past them. I'm making him sound kind of hectic, but his technique also had a level of refinement that made soccer aficionados curl their pinkies in appreciation. Listen to the commentator describe this goal he scored against Crystal Palace in 1997. You can practically see the light glittering off his glass of wine as he pauses to sniff the bouquet.
Good touch. Look at the pace of Owen. Spins through 2 defenders, and the most exquisite of finishes.
And of course, the backdrop of Michael's stunning rise was the rise of the Premier League era. At Arsenal, the great Dutch midfielder Dennis Bergkamp was adding a new level of sophistication to English soccer. Nick Hornby's 1992 book, Fever Pitch, had helped make soccer appealing to the types of people who collect rare LPs, and not just the types of people who beat up the types of people who collect rare LPs. Satellite TV was now beaming games around the world. There was a feeling of surging growth and possibility around the sport. David Beckham and Victoria Adams, who was then still more widely known as Posh Spice, got very symmetrically engaged at the start of 1998. English soccer, for the first time, maybe ever, certainly for the first time since George Best left Belfast, was young, cool, beautiful, and going places. And the national team's roster reflected this changing paradigm. National team stalwarts like Teddy Sheringham and Tony Adams were joined by 23-year-olds in Beckham and Scholes and teenagers in Owen and Ferdinand. By the time the 1998 Men's World Cup kicked off in France, Michael Owen was the most promising young soccer star in the most exciting league in the world. And in the round of 16 against Argentina, he scored a goal that turned the Michael Owen hype into the Michael Owen legend, at least for a little while. I am aware, incidentally, that the sentence, "pray make haste, Arabella," is not something actual English people are likely to say in 2022. I understand that England is a modern country. Very few people are traveling by mail coach or captaining frigates in the Napoleonic Wars these days. I get that. But if I'm 100% honest, I kind of think they still do all that stuff when no one's looking. Like, you walk into the room and all the English people are looking at their phones and complaining about Brexit, and then the second you walk out, they all breathe a sigh of relief and go back to acting out a Jane Austen novel. Whenever I'm in England, I always open doors really fast, like I'm trying to see the refrigerator light come on, in the hope of catching someone in the act of captaining a Napoleonic frigate. I have not yet succeeded, but I'm not giving up. England, Argentina, 16th minute of the game. We're tied 1-1. England's goal came through a penalty that Michael Owen set up. Alan Shearer converted it. Now, young David Beckham, resplendent in profoundly symmetrical glory, has the ball in the middle of the pitch behind the halfway line. Beckham spots Owen lurking in the center circle and plays a slightly tricky oblique ball between Owen and the Argentine defender Jose Chamat. With his first touch, Owen uses the outside of his right foot to knock the ball about 8 feet ahead of him. Gorgeous first touch. And now it's a foot race to the ball between Owen and Chamat. You can guess how that goes. Owen squirts forward, blows by Chamat, gets on the ball, and cannons toward the goal. But there's still one defender ahead of him, Roberto Ayala, planted just outside the Argentina area, and Chamat is still at his heels. Chamat clatters him hard enough to knock him off balance, but Owen does the thing where his legs seem to be scrabbling in one direction and his arms seem to be pumping in the other direction, and he somehow uses this moment of recovering his balance to help him cut unexpectedly inside, which he does so suddenly that he not only loses Chamat, he also manages to get around Roberto Ayala, even though Ayala has been standing there waiting for him while he sprinted the length of half the pitch. This is the second episode in this series, by the way, in which poor Roberto Ayala got destroyed just before an incredible goal in the 1998 World Cup. Dennis Bergkamp did it to him too. Ayala was a really good defender. It's sports. It happens. Anyway, Owen rounds Ayala and takes a hard shot across the face of the goal, right to left, top left corner of the net, goal. 18 years old, and the kid went out and did it. Unbelievable sports story. Fairy tale sports story. The commentator, who's obviously biased, he's English, fully embraces the fairy tale energy of the moment. He sounds like an anthropomorphic teapot watching a prince slay a dragon.
Beckham now to Owen, and here's another Owen run. He's going to worry them again. It's a great run by Michael Owen, and he might finish it off. Oh, it's a wonderful goal! What an amazing moment in Michael Owen's young career.
Michael Owen's autobiography, by the way, is called Off the Record. Not a great title, in my opinion. Like, you're not off the record, dude. You're publishing this on purpose for money, but it's still a fun book. It's fun mostly because Owen comes across as a kind of charmingly pragmatic, even slightly boring person, and those qualities are allowed to shine through rather than being edited out as they would have been in a lot of sports memoirs. It feels unscripted, but like boringly unscripted. For example, one of the first things Michael says about the goal against Argentina is that it, quote, started a process that has given me and my family financial security for life. You want a fairy tale? I want a 401k. Anyway, I really love two things about the way Michael Owen describes this goal in Off the Record. The first thing I love is that he says Paul Scholes materialized at the edge of his vision before he took the shot and started shouting at him to leave the ball for him, for Scholes. And Owen says he can't remember exactly what Scholes shouted, but it was either leave it or Scolesies. Please, God, let it have been Scolesies. Few people love Paul Scholes as a soccer player more than I do, but the idea that he popped up before one of the greatest goals in English soccer history, demanded to take the shot himself, and conveyed this demand by screaming Scolesies, it's too good. I'm sorry. I hear that story and I just helplessly get out my credit card and start mashing numbers into the BritBox website. Bring me my bow of burning skulls. The other thing that I love about the account of the goal in Owen's book is how he describes the aftermath of the moment. I really like this description. He says, "When I say that scoring takes the pressure off, it implies that I go into a game experiencing pressure as an unpleasant sensation. I don't. It's just that when you've put that ball away, you feel you've accomplished something that can't be taken away from you. Before the goal, a voice says, I've got to do something, contribute in some way. In France, scoring against Argentina just made me feel that the possibilities for me in that game were endless." England is now winning the match 2-1. The quarterfinals are in reach. Optimism abounds in Chester, in Cheddar, in Cheshire, and also in Chesham, and in Chatham, and in Chumley, which are real English towns. Optimism abounds in Coulsdon, which is in Surrey. The sky is the limit for English soccer. And the sky remains the limit for most of the rest of the first half, just before halftime. Javier Zanetti scores an equalizer, 2-2. Just after halftime, David Beckham is provoked into a perfectly symmetrical outburst of anger by the Argentine midfielder Diego Simeone, who's now the manager of Atletico Madrid. That Diego Simeone. Simeone fouls Beckham hard. Beckham falls to the ground. He's face down, symmetrically prone, and as Simeone walks by, Beckham sort of weakly kicks his leg at him, trying to trip him, I guess. There's not much to it, but it's just enough. Simeone reacts as if Beckham just threw him down a flight of stairs, and in the commentary of the English announcers, you can feel the sky falling on anthropomorphic teapots everywhere.
Well, Brian, it could be a red card. That's what Alan Shearer's worried about.
What, for Beckham?
Yes, because he retaliated. And
It's a yellow card. Wait a minute, he's taking another card out for Beckham. It's a red card for David Beckham. Oh, no.
England is forced to play almost the whole second half and all of extra time with 10 men. And then England does what England does. They lose in a penalty shootout. Owen makes his. And that's just about the end of the line for that feeling of pure optimism. Back in England, excitement about the team quickly curdled into a feeling of anger and disappointment. David Beckham was burned in magnificently symmetrical effigy outside pubs. A kind of nightmare feedback loop kicked in, whereby the more media attention the superstar English players received, the more fans resented their celebrity and blamed their lifestyles for their failure to win big tournaments. But the more fans were angry about their lifestyles, the more newspapers they sold, and the bigger their celebrity became. English soccer passed through the Sven-Göran Eriksson years. Sven-Göran Eriksson, the first ever foreign manager of the English national team. He's Swedish. During his tenure, tantalizingly promising results alternated with disappointments and scandals and endless, exhausting debates about tactics and whether Frank Lampard and Steven Gerrard could play in the same midfield. The team did reach the quarterfinal of the 2002 Men's World Cup. Michael Owen scored in that quarterfinal game against Brazil, but they became better known for their unruly entourages of celebrity wives and girlfriends and their lavish spending on away trips. In 2006, Wayne Rooney provoked a national crisis when he fractured his fourth metatarsal ahead of the World Cup. The team again managed to make the quarterfinals, but lost to Portugal in a disastrous penalty shootout during which Lampard, Gerrard, and Jamie Carragher all had their penalties saved. Then they passed through the Fabio Capello era. Capello, the disciplinarian Italian manager who was tasked with reining in the excesses of the players and restoring order. Or you could say, if you wanted to be more cynical, that he was tasked with performing a sort of theatrical discipline designed to placate exasperated English tabloid readers by humiliating his celebrity players. Whatever it was, it didn't work. England went to South Africa, set up in a sort of monastic isolation designed to keep their focus solely on soccer, and lost 4-1 to Germany in the second round. Things got even worse under Roy Hodgson. Then they got a little better under Gareth Southgate. But by that point, the golden generation had retired. They reached the finals of Euro 2020, but lost to Italy on penalties. And this year, well, we'll see. Do you remember the question we asked earlier? The Miss Marple streaming service question? The question was, what counts as a successful career? What does it mean when one failure overshadows a whole lot of impressive accomplishments? What does it mean when that failure defines your career? Well, among other things, in sports, I think it's often a sign of a broken relationship between media, players, and fans. It's a sign that something is not adding up in the stories we tell about players and what they do. Because success and failure are social concepts, aren't they? They need a climate of relative sincerity, of good faith communication in which to function. And this is an era in which everyone around this team is lost in such an astonishing labyrinth of bullshit that a climate of sincerity simply does not exist. As supporting citations to buttress this assertion about a labyrinth of bullshit, as footnotes 1 through 5 in the Bullshit Labyrinth's Wikipedia page, I bring you 5 semi-randomly selected British tabloid headlines about Wayne Rooney. We'll omit Captain Fatso because we've already talked about that one. Does Captain Fatso have a Napoleonic frigate? Number 5, the Daily Mirror. Get out of my brothel, Mr. Rooney! With an exclamation mark. Subhead, massage parlor worker told Star visits could ruin him, Old Bailey hears. Yikes! Number 4, the Daily Star. Rooney tart. I charged Wayne ugly tax. That one. Yikes! Number 3, the Sun, surprisingly. Don't fancy yours much, Wayne. Subhead, revealed. PVC Gran he bedded in brothel. This was after the teenage Rooney had supposedly slept with a woman who had committed the unpardonable crime of being a grandmother. Getting a little desensitized here, but Jesus Christ, yikes! Number 2, the Daily Mirror, one more time. Rooney, U.S., booze, shame. I guess he was arrested for getting drunk in an American airport. I didn't know that was a crime. Yikes! Number 1, the Sun. Sometimes you wish it would set. The reign of Wayne is waning in Spain. Now it's over to Kane. Okay, that one's kinda good in a Cheddar in Cheshire sort of way. The best British tabloid headline ever, of course, remains a Sun headline from February 2000 after the second-tier Scottish club Inverness Caledonian Thistle, a real team, had upset Scottish soccer behemoth Celtic. Caledonian Thistle's nickname is Cayley Thistle. Cayley. The headline read, Super Cayley go ballistic. Celtic are atrocious. Just a spoonful of sugar helps the Ryan Sessegnon go down. I'm so sorry. The point is, happiness in soccer isn't just a matter of winning and losing. It also requires a climate that is receptive to the possibility of happiness. Look at the layers of contempt, resentment, entitlement, and sheer sneering malevolence folded into those Rooney headlines, and it's clear English soccer during the Golden Generation era is a cautionary tale when you create a sports culture that expects triumph but is actively hostile to joy. Michael Owen, who grew up in Wales, remember, actually left England for a while. Like David Beckham, he went to play for Real Madrid. Just for about a year, injuries ended up derailing the later part of his career. But I always thought the instinct to leave was a promising impulse. English stars very rarely leave the country during their primes. But I don't know, try something new. In any case, Anglophile or Anglophobe, I look at the English national soccer team during the Golden Generation era and see more or less the opposite of what I personally want the game to look like. I'm an American. I just want to have a good time, which is why when I think about these players, I'd like to stay in 1998, in the moment when Michael Owen scored that spectacular goal. I'd like to be the supporting footnote on a moment that's not synonymous with disappointment and failed potential, but that's synonymous with their opposites. It's historically selective, obviously, but then I enjoy English costume dramas. Historically selective is my middle name, and I'd like to be the supporting footnote on a goal that's synonymous with joy. Because, and this is basically my whole philosophy of sports, and very much not the philosophy of the English men's national team, when you're lucky enough to be given a bow of burning gold and arrows of desire, you should really do your best to use them for some purpose other than shooting yourself in the foot. This is 22 Goals, the story of the World Cup, written by me, Brian Phillips. The executive producers of 22 Goals are Chris Ryan, Juliette Littman, and Sean Fennessy. Our story editor is Conor Nevins. The show was produced by Devon Renaldo, Mike Wargon, and Vikram Patel. Fact-checking by Kellen B. Coates. Kellen tells me that it's, quote, a stretch to refer to Meghan Markle as my colleague, even though we are both Americans with very popular podcasts and complicated feelings about the UK. The sound design in this episode is by Devon Renaldo, who also composed the theme song and many of the music tracks. Some of the other music you heard in this episode is from Epidemic Sound and Blue Dot Sessions. Additional mixing by Scott Somerville. Art direction and illustration by David Shoemaker. Match footage from FIFA. Thanks for listening. Has this ever happened to you? I'm a British tabloid headline writer, but I can't think of a single tabloid headline idea. Sounds familiar, right? Don't worry. Sometimes even the best British tabloid headline writers struggle to come up with the goods. Hey, no one ever said writing puns that made regular people want to walk into the ocean would be easy. That's why we've invented FabTab Deluxe, the world's first fully automated tabloid headline app. Just download FabTab, input a situation, and watch as a perfectly formed tabloid headline takes shape before your eyes. Did Everton's Ben Godfrey transfer to Arsenal, then link up with Gabriel Jesus to score a goal past Manchester United backup goalkeeper Nathan Bishop? God and Jesus smite Bishop. It literally couldn't be easier. Did young midfielder Tyler Dibbling get into a feud with Wolverhampton Wanderers' Joe Hodge after falsely claiming to be Hodge's stepbrother, only to score a magnificent solo goal while Hodge was screaming that they weren't related? Dribbling Dibbling dodges Hodge's sibling quibbling. Did teenage Liverpool player Luke Chambers get cloned 36 times by a mad scientist, only to have all nearly 40 copies of himself discovered at once by Leeds United's Stuart Dallas? Enter the Stew Tang, 36 chambers.
Why, it's bloody spiffing.
So don't delay. Download FabTab Deluxe today, or how will you know what to do when West Ham's Saeed Benrahma gets into a fight with an alpaca while Everton's Vitaly Mykolenko reads a celebrated novel by Min Jin Lee under a tree belonging to a species with uniquely fan-shaped leaves. Benrahma llama drama as Mykolenko reads pachinko under ginkgo. Act now.